In this video, we're going to show you how to install the strut and spring assembly on your Nissan Quest, located behind your front wheels. Using a 21mm socket, loosen and remove your lug nuts. Remove your wheel and set it aside. On the top here, we're going to use a 19mm socket. On the back side of the Sweber end-link stud is going to be a 19mm, so we're going to use a thin wall wrench to hold the nut or the stud on the other side. Now if you follow our ABS wire up here to the strut, there's going to be two connection points. You want to go ahead and use a couple fingers and grab the rubber. Don't grab the wire, but grab the rubber portion and pull outward gently. And then you want to go ahead and repeat for the other side. Separating that wire. On the leading edge over here, we have our brake flex hose, and it's held in place by our horseshoe clip. Now there's a little tab right here. Simple enough. You can use a flathead screwdriver or a pry bar. Put it right here and just gently tap that out. Now when that pops out, it's going to be shaped like a horseshoe or a U, but it also has a curve in it. So you want to make sure when you install it, it has that curve facing outward, locking that flex hose in place. Go ahead and grab that hose, and we could push that in and wiggle that out of place. There we go, and separate that. On the lower portion of our strut, we have two 21mm nuts, 21mm bolts. I'm going to use a wrench on the bolt side and our socket on the other. I'm going to go ahead and loosen and remove these nuts. I'm going to gently tap out the lower bolt. Before we remove the upper bolt here, I want to go ahead and secure the knuckle, because when we remove this here, the knuckle may naturally want to pull forward, and that could cause some issues with our CV axle and other components. So we're going to use a securing strap. Hook it through the caliper bracket. We're going to run it across the front of our rotor, around the side, and we're just going to hook this. You can hook it on the control arm or on a bolt or something on the back side here. And this is just simply to prevent this from falling out. With that secured, we can now go ahead and remove the upper bolt here on our strut. By doing that, we should be able to gently slide this. And if we move this enough, we can just simply separate our strut assembly. But before we do that, let's move up into the engine compartment and undo the 3 bolts up top. Once you have your hood open, over on the driver's side above the fuse panel area here, you want to go ahead and access the upper portion of the strut through this panel. You're going to gently grab this here and pop this off. There are 4 little retaining clips. Now let's go inside and we'll show you where these bolts are. If we look inside here, there's going to be one right down on the bottom here. There is one further back right where my finger is pointing, and then there's another one right around the corner over here. We can see that one right over there we need to get to. So we're going to go ahead and use our ratchet and loosen and remove those. Now on the bolts, when we remove them here, the closest one here is going to be easy to get to. We're using a 13mm deep socket. If you go straight back to that next one, we'll probably be able to get to it with this as well. But when you go over to the one closest to the fender, we're going to have to switch over to a shallow socket. And you're also going to need a long ratchet to get in here. Not as much the front one here, but the rear. And I was able to loosen that front bolt enough so I could spin it out the rest of the way by hand. There it is. I'm going to use my shallow for the back. We can use a deep as well, but you can get that in there. So now that we have loosened that bolt in the very back, we're going to switch over to a stubby. And this is a stubby 1/4 inch with a 13mm socket. You can actually put your arm right inside, and you're going to use this. You are pretty limited for space in there, so it is going to be handy having this. Here's that second bolt. Now for the last bolt, we're going to use our 1/4 inch, a little bit longer ratchet. You could probably use a stubby, but this does give you a little bit better leverage. Let's go in and get that third and last bolt out. So as we're loosening the third and last bolt, what's going to happen is the strut is going to drop down into the wheel well area of the vehicle. So you want to go ahead and use one arm, reach into the wheel well, hold on to that strut while you loosen and remove that last bolt up on the top. There it is there. I'm going to remove the bolt and the ratchet from up top. And with these removed, we'll be able to go ahead and pull that strut out next. Bring that down, tilt it out and away from the body and out of the wheel well. And we're going to take our new strut. I'm going to feed this down and in. So what we're going to do is I'm going to install the strut here. And I'm just going to throw one bolt in. This is going to allow the strut to have some pivoting. We want to line this up. And we're going to put a jack underneath the control arm. And we're going to slowly lift this up to take up the gap here between the strut assembly and the body of the vehicle. That should help us up on top when we're installing our bolts. Now we have our jack set up underneath. And all we want to do is raise this up enough so that that strut goes up into that pocket, and we want to leave it just a hair bit loose so we can go ahead and still move that strut around a little bit. There we go. Now if you're doing this job by yourself, you're going to want to go ahead and reach around that fender, grab that strut spring, and you're going to move the strut around a little bit so you can line up one of the bolt holes. If you're working by yourself, that's what you're going to want to do. If you have assistance, which would be much better, they can go ahead and move that strut around so that the bolt holes line up top. Now, grab one of the bolts. All right, we got our front bolt installed. We're able to catch our outer bolt. And let's go ahead and reach back here and get that rear bolt started. We have to grab that strut and just wiggle it a little bit. Now that we have all three of these bolts started, let's go ahead and snug them down. Now that we have all three of our bolts started, I'm going to use my stubby ratchet here to go ahead and snug these down. Just want to go ahead and do this for all three. All right, so we have our three bolts tightened down. Next step is to go ahead and torque these down. Now we're going to torque down our three upper bolts here to 22 foot-pounds. If you have the ability to do so, go ahead and do that now. And repeat for the last one. Once you have all three bolts installed, go ahead and install the cover. And let's move back to the wheel well. Now at this point here, you can see that our strut is kind of twisted a little bit. That's not an issue. Go ahead and just grab that and rotate it because the upper portion of the strut is on a bearing. So line that up. I'm going to grab one of the bolts, grab the knuckle assembly. I'm going to lift this up into position. That'll hold it in place. Now we can go ahead and get our lower bolt installed. Let's go ahead and install our lower bolt. Probably just have to move that knuckle inboard a little bit. You just have to wiggle this around. Let's go ahead and get the nut started. Just going to tuck this wire over to the side. Let's go ahead and snug these down. Now that we have those snug down, we will come back and torque these later. But let's go ahead and install our flex hose right here. We're going to feed this back and then up and into this bracket. And we're going to take our clip right here, make sure that the arch is facing upward, and press that in. And usually you can press that right on, but just tap that on with the hammer. Make sure that's fully seated and that hose is secured. Now we're going to take our ABS wire here on the other side, install that. Now you're going to push in on the rubber grommet. Do not push on the wire. Simply slide that in and work that into place. And then bring the other one around. Do the same here. Let's torque down our upper knuckle to strut bolts to 101 foot-pounds. Go ahead and remove the securing strap and set that aside. Go ahead and take your sway bar end link. You want to line that up. In some cases here, you want to go ahead and put your jack underneath and raise up the control arm if you need to, or you can feed this through. Now in our particular case, our sway bar end link is coming up at an angle, and we do want to tighten and torque this down level. So we're going to go ahead and jack this up a little bit so that our sway bar end link is nice and level. That way we can get a proper torque spec on our nut. So we placed our jack just underneath our sway bar here, and what we're going to do is slowly raise this up. And by doing this, it's going to cause our upper link to line up. Feed that through. Let's go ahead and snug that down, and then we can go ahead and torque it from there. We're going to torque this to 58 foot-pounds. Now we can release our jack. Take your wheel and install it. I want to go ahead and start these lug nuts by hand. Get them started a few threads. This will help prevent cross threading. Once we have them all started, we're going to go ahead and snug them down. When tightening down the lug nuts, you want to do it in a crisscross pattern. Go ahead and torque your wheels down to 80 foot-pounds. And do this in a crisscross pattern. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.